Hello everyone, I'm Rosphere, and in this video I'm going to talk about Classic Burning Crusade and the guides that people are making, because a lot of them, frankly, are a bunch of bullshit, and some of the guides are really good. The guides that are examples of guides that are good are basically ones that will help you prep for Burning Crusade and maybe help you pick your class, maybe help you pick your race, things like that. Knowledge that we have and we know from Burning Crusade, because that's numbers that we actually have and can actually give you good information on. But there's people making guides on exact, this is like maybe like your warrior DPS rotation. They may be right, they might not be right, but just using that as an example, there's guides like that that give you exact numbers, exact stats, functionality of abilities, and stuff like that that are just frankly a bunch of bullshit. And I wanted to call this out during the before Classic had come out, like the original, like Classic. I don't know how to phrase it. Classic Vanilla. I wanted to call this out because there was quite a few people making guides then as well, and they were saying very specific things that I know to be false, and that I knew were false then, and proved to basically be a bunch of shit after Classic had released. And I'm going to use Tips Out as an example for this one, because honestly I think he has a thick skin, and this is an old video, it doesn't really matter at this point. And I like Tips Out a lot. I like his videos, especially the lore videos, and basically when he uses them to explain, like what's a good example, the feelings or the sentiment behind the Defias and the exact like lore behind that, stuff like that, and basically how Classic explains lore rather than showing you through cutscenes. You read the quests, and it's there's much more trail of breadcrumbs. I can't speak. Breadcrumbs. It's much more like a trail of breadcrumbs that leads you to form your own conclusion about the Defias, whether you like them or don't like them. It leaves it up to the player, and that is genius. And I really like the way that Tips Out describes that kind of stuff, with the cooler quest lines from Classic. So with that being said, Tips Out's a really cool guy. I like him, but I'm going to use him as an example for this because he did make a warrior guide that was really in depth before Classic that I thought was rather ridiculous at the time, because it was patently false. It was just a bunch of shit that ended up proving to be shit. Granted, it wasn't him that was actually saying these things. It was a warrior that was supposedly like really intelligent, but had never actually played the original vanilla, and all of his knowledge was based off of private server gameplay, so he didn't actually know anything about what this was. So he was basically making a guide about a game that he had never played, with knowledge that he didn't have. So with that being said, I'm going to show a quick clip here to give an example of what that is.
Seconds, very nice. Again, PvP oriented.
Yeah.
After
PvP.
that, what do we do?
Okay.
Yeah, 3 into Blood Craze now.
It's not a terrible spec, I guess.
So Blood Craze
okay.
regenerates a percentage of your total health over 6 seconds after being the victim.
Blood Craze kind of sucks.
Now, I know some
not sure why he
people,
wants it.
Go actually two-handed fury while they're leveling to abuse this talent and the enrage talent.
Oh, do they?
Can you kind of
I
explain
didn't know that.
what people do to abuse these two talents? Of course, enrage gives you a percent of melee damage bonus for 12 seconds, up to a maximum of 12 swings after being the victim of a critical strike. How can you abuse this while leveling in tandem with Blood Craze?
Yeah, I wonder how you can do that.
When you sit down, the mob or the player, if they melee you, they will crit you. So you can control these two talents, just have them at 100% uptime by just sitting down.
So
yeah.
if I do /sit
Are you sure about that?
and a mob attacks me, it automatically crits.
That's right, yeah.
And when it
the ability won't crit. So,
that's weird. I don't remember that.
Find the default sit key, because if you spam that sit key, it'll be sit stand. If you actually make a macro that's /sit, then you can spam it.
You look like an idiot too.
Get crit.
That's absolutely insane. So I can control when I get crit and subsequently
absolutely
control
insane.
my enrage up.
Okay, so I think I've made my point with that one. Anybody who's played Warrior throughout Classic kind of knows that this doesn't work, and it's just ridiculous. I knew this didn't work going into Classic. A bunch of people didn't believe me when I was telling them this never actually worked this way. I don't remember it working this way. I'm pretty sure I would have noticed if it did. I wasn't like a super great player then, obviously. Like I was terrible back in Classic, just like most people were. But this wasn't a thing, and for the most part, people aren't stupid. They're not gonna miss something like that back in Classic. It's just like, oh, nobody knew about this crazy little like synergy. No, they didn't know about it because it didn't exist. Uh, and then this guy goes on to start talking about axes and things like that, and saying that axes are actually the best for PvP. And I thought that was weird because nobody gets axes for PvP. Like, swords are just better. Like, what weapons are the best PvP weapons for warriors? Bone Reaver's Edge. I mean, that's better than Grand Marshal's Claymore, depending on whether or not you're going against like a Clothy or say like a Bear Druid. If you're going against a Bear Druid, you'll just delete them with the the Bone Reaver's Edge. Like it's just a better weapon because the proc on it is overpowered, and the warrior specialization for getting the extra swing with a sword does way more DPS than the axes do. And I know this for a fact because in Burning Crusade, for example, when you play arms in raids, because that's a thing, you actually play arms in raids, you use a sword because it does the most DPS. Axes are not used in PvP or PvE ever, right? Like in Classic, it's a bit different because maybe you only get an axe as a weapon, so you go axe spec. For example, I use an axe because my best two-handed weapon happens to be an axe, and I never got rank 14, so I didn't get Grand Marshal's Claymore. But if I had a sword, I would be using that because it's better. It's just flat out better, and it's always been that way through Classic. TBC, it changes in Wrath because it doesn't matter as much, but Wrath and BC, especially BC, axes are a terrible weapon. You don't want axes because orcs, the racial for axe specialization, for example, changes, so it's just not powerful anymore, right? So using an axe on an orc doesn't matter anymore. So you want maces for the mace stun in PvP because they buff that and it gets ridiculous. You'll see like no warrior in PvP will be using a sword or an axe at all in Burning Crusade. In PvE raids, arms, swords only because of the proc. It does more damage. It does more damage in Classic. That's just how it works. And this guy that's making this guide obviously doesn't understand that. And I'll show a clip real quick here of him talking about the axes.
That's some other day though. But yeah, with 6 points left now, Blood Craze,
6 points.
What do I do next?
Weird specs so far.
1 into improved battle shout, and then you 5
okay.
into enrage.
1 for that.
5 into enrage.
Got
And
it.
there you go. That takes you to level 60.
So why would you?
Do I have to respec during this at all, Moo? Or I can just do this without any respecs?
I think it's with the spec, right? This is like the best spec for PvP, for ranking.
It's the best,
You can also
huh?
attack dungeons with it, and it's great for leveling as well.
Is
and
it?
if you're lucky with your weapons while leveling, you get axes all the way, then you never have to respec.
Oh, that
So
part's
then you
true.
save your respec costs, you want to get your mount, and then when it comes to respecing Fury for Molten Core, then it's a 1G, 5G, 10G respec instead of a 25G,
Huh.
50G.
That's
Okay.
crazy. That's absolutely insane.
All right, so I'm not 100% sure, but with the Tips Out's reactions there, it kind of seems like he knows this is a bunch of bullshit. At least that's what I hope. I don't know why he posted it. Again, I'm not really doing this to call Tips out, but it's more of just an example of when somebody's actually saying like this is how it is, this is like 100% boom boom boom, you want these things, this is how it works. They're working off information that is minimum 12 years old. They are very likely to not remember, A, and B, the information that they're working off of is likely to be off of private servers, and C, it could be a guy like this who never actually played the game and his only information is coming from private servers. And once again, I want to point out that it's not actually Tips Out putting out this information. It was the monkey guy, I don't remember the exact name, but it was that person who was putting out this information, and Tips was just giving him the platform. I think because he was well known on the private server community as being a good warrior. But when it came down to it in the actual Classic meta, it was basically all the information he was putting out here was wrong. That spec's actually kind of ridiculous in my opinion. It has a lot of utility, sure, but he lost massive amounts of damage in that spec. Warrior versus Warrior, for example, I have a friend who went more utility. Just as a baseline example, we both had the same two-handed weapons. We have very similar gear. Dueled roughly 10 times, and I beat him 9 of the 10 times in those duels. And it was just because I have way more damage built into my spec than he did. And I was just pumping way more than he was. And in PvP, especially in Classic, the other person can't do anything if they're dead.
Immediately sacking the pet.
Immediately sacked. I think that's because he saw how much damage Realize puts out. Oh
wow.
no, what was that?
That was wreck. He popped recklessness.
He popped the 30-minute cooldown for the Warlock, dude. That's pure terror from the little gnome warrior, dude. And that's a GG, dude. That's a lot of damage.
Yeah, that was
God,
huge.
what kind of...
Right? Like, you just want to kill him faster. You don't need all of that utility, especially since there's no arenas. There's not really a reason to have it. So, even in PvP, it's not that good. He said it was good for tanking dungeons. That spec, again, you lost a lot of damage because you went for a lot of utility. So you're just not going to hold threat. And you're going to be using two-handed weapons. So again, really not a good idea if you're tanking with this spec. I don't know what you're doing. It's kind of dumb. Leveling, it's okay. Again, you're still missing a lot of damage and even some rage generation because you didn't go for Unbridled. I think it's Unbridled Wrath. He left out some rage generation, and he left out a bunch of damage. The axes being good for leveling, that's about the only thing that he got right. Other than that, swords are better. Just flat out in Classic, you want a two-handed sword. That's just it. You just want a two-handed sword. In Burning Crusade, that's maces for PvP. You want two-handed mace, and then PvE, the two-handed swords. That's just how it is. So, this guy putting out a lot of bad information. Again, this is just to warn people away from some of these guides. If somebody's giving you exact information on exactly how things work, just be a little skeptical, look at it, be like, I wonder if it actually was that way, because it probably wasn't, and this guy's doing it for views. So, with that being said, if you like the video, please give me a like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.